When I was a kid, I saw him every day. The Jesus depicted here will soon be resurrected, which means he's a mixture of being both dead and alive at the same time. I went to school and Mass at Christ the King Roman Catholic Church in the heart of Hollywood, California. It's where I received my first communion, where I met some of my best friends, and learned to ask questions about death and the afterlife. It seems that every culture and religion in the world has some sort of concept of the afterlife, being dead and alive in a different form at the same time. But my question is, how does the belief in an afterlife, or lack thereof, actually help us begin to process death? My journey begins here in church, but most of what I learned about death, grief, and the afterlife, I learned through my family. At home, I learned a very special tradition from the women in my life that goes back hundreds of years. It's something that a lot of people across the world practice. It's a tradition that involves 9 days of prayers called a novena. My family believes that when we put this into practice, we help people who have passed over make it safely to the other side. This is my tia Tere and her daughter, my cousin, Roxy, who have cultivated the tradition and plan on passing it down. The novena consists of the whole family getting together with a big spread of food, and through prayer and song, las urrutias begin to help the spirits pass over. And every day for 9 days, we all get together and do it all again.
Vamos a comer, filmar y también hablar de las preguntas que tengo. Pero thank you for cooking, tía.
En el nombre del Padre, del Hijo y del Espíritu Santo. Amén.
Uno de ustedes van a ser el que me encuentran muerta. So ella se murió con mi papá y yo fui el segundo que estuve con ella. So en ese tiempo que cuando se murió y llegó mi tía y todos los nietos, usted fue la próxima persona que llegó ahí con nosotros, porque toda la familia tiene esa confianza en ti y en las tradiciones de qué es hacer las urrutias, qué es lo que hacemos nosotros cuando alguien se muere. A veces hacemos algo que es la novena, ¿verdad? Y que tenemos mujeres en nuestra familia, las urrutias, que llegan y rezan.
Ok, la tradición del Santo Rosario empezó en los 1800. El Urrutia es Bastos, de por allá de España. Entonces, mis bisabuelos le transmitieron a mi abuelita esta tradición del Santo Rosario y de orar por los difuntos, por los que ya se fueron. Entonces, ellos, o sea que viene de generación en generación. Y esperamos que en el futuro nuestras generaciones también sigan con esta tradición tan hermosa, que es tan importante, sí, tan linda para poder ayudar a nuestros seres queridos que ya se fueron.
La cosa que le quería preguntar también es que esta tradición, ¿tú piensas que esto va a ser continuado with the new generation?
Pues yo espero que sí, que mi hija pues está muy interesada en seguir esta tradición, porque es muy productiva para nuestros seres queridos que ya se van. Es como una obra de caridad que nosotros hacemos para ellos.
¿Cómo es que esta tradición ha afectado en la manera en que tú miras a la muerte?
La muerte para mí es algo natural, porque nacemos para morir y morimos para vivir, ¿verdad? Entonces, tenemos que tomar la muerte como algo natural, que va a venir en cualquier momento, no lo sabemos, ¿verdad? Pero tenemos que estar conscientes que nos vamos a morir.
Sudó sangre y regó al suelo.
Whether you do or not, the fact is that most folks believe that there's a part of us that goes somewhere after we die. But of course, visions of the afterlife have varied a lot throughout history and across cultures. For example, in Tibet, one of the most prominent religions is Mahayana Buddhism, and Buddhists typically believe that life after death is literally another life, that we're all constantly reincarnated until we reach nirvana, a state of enlightenment. Likewise, in some African cultures like the Akan of Ghana, Death is seen as passing into a new phase of life in another version of this world. There, the dead can stay connected to their communities and families as ancestor spirits. Or if they had unfinished business in the mortal realm, according to cultures like the Yoruba of West Africa, they might be reincarnated too. And all around the world, ideas about the afterlife have been shaped by the influences of Christianity and Judaism. Christians also tend to believe in a heaven, and many think there's a hell too, a place where unjust souls are punished instead of rewarded. These beliefs are especially common here in the US. A survey done in 2021 found that more than 80% of Americans believe in some sort of afterlife. About 75% of them believed in some version of what they called heaven. And even 30% of folks who said they weren't affiliated with any religion still believed in an afterlife. But if you ask me, it's Oprah and Gail who will be welcoming us at the pearly gates. And maybe Stedman, if we're lucky. What I want to know is why? Why is a belief in the afterlife so widely held? And what purpose does it serve? Now, I'm no anthropologist, but I know one. So I took my questions to DeLon Justinville at American University in Washington.
How does the belief help us process death individually and in groups?
It operates like a release valve, if that makes sense. With these different rituals across various cultures, the processing of death has so much to do with taking those who are mourning and grieving through the emotion that they're feeling, while also understanding that this is a celebration, or at least a space of honoring the worth and the value and the love that life had brought to them.
Yeah, I mean, you already answered my next question, in that it acts almost as a balm of what people are having and feeling through their grief. But why is the belief in the afterlife so widespread?
It's so widespread because of how it defines our capacity for living, but also it has this conception of afterlife as continuity, as legacy building. The work that you've done, the work that you've community done, how do you want to see that continued on? How do those who came before, how do those who came after, how does my end tie into this culture we created, that we've propped up, all these ways of of being in and being with one another? How do we keep that going? How do we build upon that even after I'm gone?
Yeah, or almost as if it gives things meaning.
Yes.
And I think that's something that humans really want to do with everything in our life.
Everything, yeah.
What's the earliest known expression of belief in an afterlife?
First, I should say that it depends on what sense of afterlife what one is most attuned to. There are some who say that the closest translation to the word afterlife, especially as it means a continuity of life, is accredited to certain histories of Judaism. But we also know that we can go back to the classical era, where the ancient Romans were a myriad of funeral rituals, burial practices, cremations versus inhumations, and these grand gestures at the intersection of the relationship between the afterlife and the supernatural. You've now entered this phase where you might have to appease a god to ensure your passage. You might have to fend yourself off from preachers who are guarding underworld passages or whatever the hereafter looks like for you. We have this in text, we have this in visual, even pre-text, millennia before that. The ancient Egyptians and their hieroglyphics on the processes of death also very heavily related to religious beliefs and their different deities.
So Dawn, what is your interpretation of the afterlife?
Lately, one of my main interpretations of the afterlife is how we, in our everyday, constitute the afterlives of those who have gone before us, and how the work that we do and the ways that we live are themselves ritual practices of ancestral veneration, and how we show, our appreciation for the work that's come before us and how we commit to the work that comes after us.
Wow.
That's nice to know.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful vibes. Loved it. It was great.
There are as many beliefs about the afterlife as there are people in the world. Some people prefer 9 days of prayer. Others believe that the only life is the one we live here. No matter the belief, the hope is that you can continue to cherish yourself and each other in the moment, so that when death does come, in the words of death doula Alua Arthur, it was a life worth dying for. Or as my bestie says, get a little messy and do it for the plot.